I was an old man by the time I first told this story out loud. Sitting beside a fire burned down to coals, a tin cup of black coffee going cold in my hand, a deputy too young for his badge asking me what the quietest man I ever saw looked like. I told him. He looked like nothing at all. That was the whole point. There is a kind of man this frontier made that you will not read about in dime novels. He does not talk about the things he has done. He does not wear his history on his belt. He moves through a town the way a cloud shadow moves across the desert. Slow, inevitable. And by the time you notice it, it is already over you. I saw a man like that, just the once. And what I watched him do in the dust outside a dead woman's house, I have never told a soul until now. Autumn of 1882. The high desert country east of the Rio Puerco, New Mexico territory. The cottonwoods had gone gold and the nights were already cold enough to crack your knuckles. And in that country there was a widow named Clara Reyes, 26 years old, with nobody left worth counting. Clara had come to New Mexico as a bride 5 years before, riding out from Missouri with her husband, a rancher named Thomas Reyes. Thomas was a good man, patient, hard-working, not much for conversation, but steady as a fence post in a windstorm. He scratched 40 acres of grazing land out of the territory over 3 years by knowing where the creek bent and where the grass ran deep, and by working from before first light until long after last. Then in the spring of 1881, Tomas fell off a horse on a hillside he had crossed 1,000 times and broke his neck on a rock. Gone in one ordinary afternoon. Clara buried him herself because there was no one else. Then she sat down in the dirt beside the grave and tried to figure out what she was supposed to do next. What she had left was the deed to 40 acres, 22 head of cattle, a mule named Harold, and a house that needed a new roof before winter. No family in the territory, no money to speak of. A woman alone on a piece of land that 3 brothers named Calloway had decided they wanted. The Calloways ran a big operation north of her acreage and had been eyeing that creek-fed grass for years. When Thomas died, they waited what they considered a respectful amount of time, about 3 weeks. And then Elias Calloway rode down to her fence line with 2 of his brothers and made an offer. She said no. They came back with a lower number and a harder tone. She said no again. After that, they stopped asking. Elias Calloway was the oldest and the one most people in Cimarron County were afraid of, though few would have said so to his face. Big man. Pale gray eyes that never quite focused on whoever he was talking to. Always skimming just past you, like he was already thinking about after. He had money and lawyers and the ear of a county judge named Farwell who could be counted on to see things the Calloway way when it mattered. Elias had learned early that patience and paperwork could take a thing from a person just as surely as a gun and left a good deal less mess. His brother Denton was a different sort. Elias was cold. Denton was just mean. The kind of mean that doesn't need a reason, the kind that enjoys itself. 31 years old, never held a job that didn't involve frightening someone. When he drank, he got loud, and when he got loud, things tended to break. The youngest was Cole, 24, who mostly did whatever his brothers pointed him at. He didn't think about it much, didn't weigh things. Some men are dangerous because they've thought it all the way through. Cole was dangerous because he hadn't thought about it at all. Through the summer and into the fall of 1882, the 3 of them made Clara's life a slow misery. 3 times a day at minimum, they rode through her grazing land, running her cattle into the creek, cutting fence lines, dragging horses across the grass she needed to carry her herd through winter. They were never directly violent toward Clara herself. Elias was too careful for that, but they were always there, always visible, always making the same point. She was alone, and they were not. Once a week, Elias would ride up to her fence, tip his hat, and ask what she planned to do when the grass ran out in January. She would say she would manage. He would smile and ride away. That smile was the worst part. What none of them knew, what nobody in Cimarron County knew because he hadn't been anywhere near there in 6 years, was that Thomas Reyes had a younger brother. A man who had spent most of his adult life putting as much distance as he could between himself and anyone who might know his name. He came on a Tuesday morning in late October, riding a roan horse that looked as tired as he did, long canvas duster that had seen better years, a hat so beaten down by weather it had given up holding any particular shape. He was 43 years old. He looked older, dark eyes and a jaw like quarried rock, and he hadn't shaved in about a week. Clara was mending fence on the south line when she heard the horse. She put her hand on her rifle before she saw who it was. Then she went still. She had met him exactly once before, at her wedding to Thomas 5 years prior. He had come alone, stayed 2 days, said almost nothing, and was gone before sunrise on the third morning without a word of goodbye. When she asked Tomas about it after, Thomas was quiet a moment and then said, "He is better when he is moving." Now the man dismounted outside her gate and held his horse's reins and looked at her with those steady dark eyes. He said, "I heard about Thomas. I am sorry I did not come sooner. I had trouble finding out." His name was Eli Reyes. That was the name he went by, at least. He had others. Names he'd picked up the way men in his line of work pick up things they'd rather not be carrying. Clara told him to put his horse in the barn and come eat something. He did. That night she told him everything about the Calloways, the fence lines, the 3 times a day rides, Judge Farwell, the way Elias tipped his hat at her fence every week like he was already measuring the land for himself. Eli sat across the table and listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet long enough that she thought he'd gone somewhere else inside his head. Then he said, "How many men does Calloway have on his spread?" she told him. He nodded, picked up his coffee cup, and looked at it. He said, "I will stay a few days and see what can be done." Clara looked at this thin, quiet, road-worn man who was going to stay a few days and see what could be done against 3 brothers and a pocket judge. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said thank you and showed him the spare blankets. That night, lying awake in the dark, Clara Reyes did not know what she had let into her house. But the Calloway brothers were about to find out. 2 days after Eli arrived, the Calloways came through again. Denton led them, 2 hired hands at his flanks, walking the horses slow and deliberate across the grass. He pulled up 20 yards from the fence and looked Eli over. The duster, the old hat, the still hands. The look of a man sizing up something that wasn't worth much. He said to Clara, "Who's this? You hire yourself some help?" Clara said, "He is family." Denton laughed. He said to Eli, "You know what family costs out here, mister? Feed and board and patience. Might want to think about whether this is your trouble to be in." Eli set down the fence driver. He turned and looked at Denton Calloway, didn't raise his voice. He said, "I think you boys should ride back the way you came." Denton stared at him. Not angry yet, more like a man who can't quite believe what he's looking at. He leaned forward in the saddle. He said, "You don't know who you're talking to." Eli said, "I know exactly who I'm talking to. You are Denton Calloway. You've got two choices right now, ride back or find out what comes next. But I'd take the first one. The two hands shifted in their saddles. There was something about how this man stood, still, but not the kind of still that comes from fear. The other kind. Denton pulled his horse back 2 steps. Then he turned it around and rode off without looking back. That evening, Clara watched Eli clean his revolver at the table. She said, "You are not afraid of him at all, are you?" He said without looking up. "No," she said. "Most men are." He said, "I know." She said, "Why not you?" He looked up then. He said, "Because I know exactly what a man like that does next, and I have been ready for it a long time." Now, before we go any further, if you are new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we tell stories like this every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. And I want to ask you something. Where are you right now? What time is it where you are? Are you settled in for the night, or someplace you maybe should not be listening to this? Pour yourself something warm. Pull that blanket up a little closer, because the story gets darker before it gets light again. We will be right back in Cimarron County. Elias Calloway came himself the next morning. He came alone. Clean coat, leather satchel, the look of a man paying a polite visit. He said to Clara, "I heard you have a relative visiting. I hope he's comfortable." Eli had appeared at her shoulder without her hearing him move. He was holding a coffee cup and looking at Elias the way you look at weather you've been expecting. Elias studied him carefully, more carefully than Denton had, and differently. Something was working behind those pale gray eyes, some recognition or near recognition he couldn't quite get hold of. He said, "I don't believe we've met." Eli said, "No, we haven't." Elias introduced himself and stated his business. He took a folded paper from the satchel. The county assessor, he said, had found an irregularity in Clara's deed filing from 1878. Judge Farwell's office had concerns. Clara felt her stomach go. This was the legal move. She had known it was coming. Eli looked at the paper, then at Elias. He said, "That deed is legal and was filed correctly. Have the judge send word." Elias smiled. All mouth, nothing behind it. He said, "You don't know what you're walking into, friend." Eli said, "You might be right about that, but I've been inside a few things people warned me about." After Elias rode out, Clara said, "He's going to have you killed. You know that?" Eli said, "Yes," she said. "Then why are you still here?" He looked out across the 40 acres in the morning light. He said, "Because I promised Tomas I would look after you if anything happened to him. I made that promise 4 years before he died. I haven't been carrying it well. I am here now." She said, "Who are you? Really, what is your name?" He was quiet a moment, then he said, "The name I use is Eli Reyes. There was a time some people called me something else, people who needed to know. They called me Sombra. The word in Spanish means shadow." Clara had never heard it. But 3 days later, when Elias rode into the town of Mora and described the quiet man at the widow's fence, a hired gun runner named Hargrove, who had been working the territory for 15 years, went white as a sheet. He told Elias, "Sombra was the man who broke up the Durango syndicate in '79. 11 men. 9 of them ended up in prison. The last one, the man who ran the whole operation, was found tied to a post in the middle of Durango's main street with a placard hung around his neck listing every crime he had ever committed, every judge he had bought, every deputy he had paid off. Nobody ever saw Sombra's face. Nobody who told the story could agree on what he looked like. Elias Calloway came home from Mora and sat in his study for a long time. That night, Clara built the fire up, and they sat across from each other in the firelight. Something had shifted since morning. Neither of them said so. It wasn't romantic, nothing like that. Just the loosening that happens when a person stops holding everything in reserve. She asked about Durango. He told her some of it. The syndicate had owned a judge, 3 deputies, a land office, and a prison warden, and had been stealing from homesteaders for 11 years. Nobody could touch them because every official channel ran back to them. He'd spent 2 years building the case and another year making sure that when it fell apart everywhere at once. All at the same time, so none of them could run. He told her about a woman named Mrs. Caldwell, a rancher who had refused to sell and was found in a burning barn before he got there. He told it quietly, without working up to it or away from it, just stated it. The kind of thing a man carries for years until it stops being a wound and just becomes weight. That was why he'd spent the 6 years since in the Colorado mountains, trying to be a man who didn't know what he knew. Then Thomas died. Clara said, "The Calloways are not the Durango syndicate." He said, "No, but it's the same shape. And Judge Farwell has been filing those irregular deed assessments against 6 other properties in the county. Yours is not the only one. 6 families are going to lose their land in the next 2 years if someone doesn't pull the mechanism apart. I've been writing letters for 2 months to a man at the state land office in Santa Fe named Donahue. He's honest, and he's been waiting for someone to hand him enough to act on. I've been getting him what he needs." Clara looked at him. She said, "So this is bigger than just me." He said, "It always was. You were just the easiest target." She sat with that for a while. The fire cracked. Then she said, "What do we do?" The next 4 days were the most useful days Clara had spent in the year since Thomas died. Eli walked the 40 acres twice, studying the ground, the way you study ground you plan to fight on, where the terrain pinched in, where the creek bank gave cover, where the long grass funneled toward the house. He sketched it out on paper. Clara watched and asked questions. He answered every one of them straight, as if it mattered that she understood, because it did. He sent a letter to Santa Fe by way of a rider he trusted, a half-Navajo man named Tully, carrying names, dates, dollar amounts, and signed affidavits from 3 other affected ranchers who had agreed to stand up if somebody stood with them. Donahue would have it within 4 days. In the meantime, there was the matter of what the Calloways were going to do when they came. And they were coming. Elias had too much invested to walk away, and now that he suspected what he was dealing with, he was not going to send Denton and 2 ranch hands. He was going to send everyone he had at night, and mean it to be final. Eli told Clara this plainly. She said, "How many?" He said 10, maybe 12. She said, "And you are 1 man." He said, "And you, come here." He took her to the south fence and spent 2 hours working with her on the Winchester she had owned for 2 years and used mostly to frighten coyotes away from the chickens. Not the basics. She knew those. He showed her where to stand in a confused situation so nobody could get behind her without her knowing, how to pick a target in low light, how to take the breath before the shot so it went where she meant it to go and not where the nerves sent it. By the end of those 2 hours, she was putting rounds where she intended at 40 yards in failing light. He said, "You are not going to have to shoot at many people. 1. The head of the snake. Can you do that?" She thought about Elias Calloway tipping his hat at her fence for a year and a half. She said yes. Then they built the trap. Eli walked the approaches to the house in full darkness. thinking through how 10 men moving at night in unfamiliar country make their choices, and then he turned the country into a problem for them. Tripwires from scavenged fence wire, ankle-high across the most obvious paths, connected to tin cans filled with pebbles. Not to injure, to shatter the silence. A false trail through the creek bank with the ground loosened at its end so it wouldn't hold a horse. A lantern on a long fuse behind the barn, set to flare at about 40 minutes after dark, when the men would be in position, but not yet committed. Enough light to make them think they'd been seen. Enough to knock the coordination out of them. He spent an afternoon on the east fence gap where the mesquite narrowed the trail to 15 feet. A coil of wire at chest height on horseback, nearly invisible, connected to nothing. Just there to make a man stop and think for 5 seconds at a moment when 5 seconds would matter. When it was done, Clara knew the ground around her own house better than she had in 2 years of living on it. That night, Eli said, "When they come, stay in the house until the first shots go. Then the back window, not the door. Creek, stay there until the night goes quiet. Then come forward." She said, "How do I tell quiet from silence?" He looked at her a moment. He said, "You will know." They came on a Thursday night. Clara had lain awake 2 nights before that, listening to nothing. On the third night, she heard hooves muffled in grass, far out, moving careful, and she knew. She was already dressed. She lit no lamps. She looked out the window into complete dark and saw nothing, which was exactly what Elias Calloway intended. The first tripwire went at 11 minutes. The clatter of tin cans split the night open, and a man's voice went up in the dark, surprised and sharp, and a second voice told him to shut up. And then everything went still for a moment. Eli was not in the house. He hadn't been there since sundown. Clara went out the back window and down to the creek and crouched in the cold grass with the Winchester, watching the dark around her house from 50 yards back. The lantern behind the barn bloomed right on time, warm yellow in the black, and she could hear men arguing, trying to figure out where they were and who had seen them. She counted 4 separate voices. There were more. The second tripwire went, more cans. A horse squealed to the east, then a voice from somewhere far out on the left, calm and carrying. "I know you are out there. I know how many. I know where your flanks are, and I know where your leader is standing right now. Nobody dies tonight if you turn around. Ride back." I say this once. The answer was 4 shots fired toward the voice. They found nothing. Then things moved fast. The east fence gap, Eli had expected most of them to swing east when the front went wrong, and they did. Clara heard the chest-high wire catch a rider in the dark, heard the horse stumble, heard someone go down hard, and then the east approach turned into shouting and spooked animals. From the south came one shot, flat and precise. Then a scream that lasted a second and quit. Not a man dying, a man whose gun hand had just stopped working, something stinging it hard enough to open the fingers. Most men couldn't have placed that shot in daylight. The hired guns began pulling back. You could hear it happen. The aggression went out of it, and what was left was just noise and confusion. Men who had done the math and didn't like what they got. 3 broke for the north fence at a gallop. 2 more followed. Denton had come around the west side on foot, which was the smart move and which Eli had been expecting. He made it to within 30 feet of the back of the house before he stepped into the section of creek bank that wouldn't hold and went in up to his thighs in November water. He came up gasping, furious, his rifle at the bottom of the creek, his pistol soaked, standing in the dark, shaking with cold and with no good options. He looked up and found Eli Reyes standing on the bank 8 feet above him, holding a lantern. Eli said, "I told you there were 2 choices." Denton said something that was mostly teeth and anger. Eli said, "Get out of that water before you freeze." And then there was Elias. Elias had held back the way a man who considers himself a commander holds back, watching, directing, waiting to step in once the thing was settled. He had watched his men scatter and his brother end up in a creek, and now he was doing what cold men do when reality turns on them, finding a new angle. The new angle was Clara. He had watched her go out the back window, hadn't expected that, and he had circled wide and come up behind her in the creek grass. He pressed the pistol to the back of her neck. His voice was very quiet. He said, "Call your man out, right now, or I put you in the ground." Clara felt the barrel, felt cold all the way through. She thought about what Eli had shown her at the south fence 4 days ago. Don't stand where someone can come up behind you. She thought, he has to be close to keep the barrel on me. And she thought about that one beat of inattention that opens up in a man the moment he thinks he's already won. She dropped. She went sideways and down at the same time, perpendicular, not away, so the barrel swept past air. She rolled in the grass. She had the Winchester up before Elias could adjust. She fired once. The shot caught Elias Calloway in the shoulder and knocked him back into the creek grass, and his pistol landed somewhere in the dark between them. And Elias lay on the land he had been trying to take from her and made a sound that was almost surprise. Clara stood up. She was shaking from the cold and from the shot and from a 1.5 years of being ground down that had just at that exact moment stopped. She said, breathing hard, "That land is mine. Remember that wherever they send you." Elias didn't say anything. Eli arrived at a run 2 minutes later. He found her standing over Elias, unhurt. He looked at her. He looked at Calloway. He said, "You all right?" She said, "I'm fine." He said, "You dropped." She said, "You told me to." He looked at her, and something moved across his face that wasn't quite a smile but was close enough. Come morning, the count was clear. 3 of the hired guns had tangled their horses in the east fence and walked back on foot to surrender, because walking back on foot in the dark to the Calloway spread was worse than whatever was waiting at the widow's gate. One man had a sprained ankle from the creek bank. Denton was hypothermic and furious and wrapped in a blanket that Clara had, with some irritation provided. Elias had a clean hole through the meat of his left shoulder, which would heal without much trouble. More consideration than he deserved. Eli had fired his revolver exactly once, that one warning shot to a man's hand in the southern approach. Nobody died. Nobody needed to. A rider arrived from Santa Fe at first light. His name was Donahue. He had ridden through the night after getting Eli's letter, which Tully had carried fast by changing horses twice. Donahue was a compact man of about 50 with quick eyes that moved over the scene. Bound hands, blanket-wrapped Denton, silent Elias, and he was quiet a moment, and then he said, "I see I'm in the right place." He had warrants, not just for the Calloways, for Judge Farwell as well, and for 2 men at the county land office who had been signing off on the fraudulent deed assessments in exchange for what Elias had described as a consulting fee. The case had been building in Santa Fe for 8 months. What Eli had sent was the last piece they needed. Judge Farwell was arrested that afternoon in his office in Mora, still wearing his robes. The 6 families next on the Calloway list kept their land. The fraudulent assessments were unwound. Elias went to prison in Santa Fe. Denton followed. Cole, the youngest, turned evidence in the first 48 hours, spent 2 years in a work camp, and was never heard from in those parts again. A week after Donahue rode back to Santa Fe, Eli started packing his saddlebags. Clara stood in the doorway and watched him. After a while, she said, "You don't have to go." He kept packing. He said, "I know." She said, "There is still work here. The roof isn't finished. The south fence is half rebuilt." He said, "Hire someone." Donahue arranged to have the Calloway accounts seized pending trial. "There is a portion going back to each affected property. You'll have enough." She said, "That is not what I mean." He stopped. He looked at her the way he'd looked at her that first night at the table. Level. No performance in it. He said, "Clara, what I can give you is safety. The land is yours. The deed is clean. You have a rifle and you know how to use it. And you have 6 neighbors now who know your name and know what you did and will come if you send for them." She said, "And you?" He said, "I'll be somewhere. And if you ever need me badly enough, you'll find a way to get word to me and I'll come." She said, "Is that a promise?" He looked out across the 40 acres in the November morning, the pale gold grass, the dark line of the creek. He said, "It is more than a promise. It is a debt I will not stop paying." He finished packing. He led the roan out of the barn and saddled it. Clara stood in the yard with her arms crossed against the cold, and when he was up, he looked at her one last time. He said, "Keep the south fence tight and shoot better than you need to, always. A shot that barely counts doesn't count at all." She said, "I know." He said, "I know you know." He rode north into the pale morning, and the cottonwoods along the creek moved in the wind, and Clara Reyes stood in the yard of the 40 acres that were hers, and watched him until the canvas duster was just a dark shape against the gray hills, and then he was gone. That spring she built an addition onto the house, not for herself, for a schoolroom. 3 ranching families north of her had children who had no school within 12 miles. And Clara had, it turned out, a patience for teaching that the previous year hadn't yet given anywhere to go. By fall, she had 11 students. 2 years after that, 17. The Reyes School stood on that land for 41 years. I set down my cup. The deputy across the fire was looking at me the way young people look at old stories, not sure if they're entirely true, wanting them to be anyway. I saw Eli Reyes one more time, 8 years after Cimarron County, in a border town south of El Paso. He was older, thinner, a scar under his left eye he hadn't had before, sitting at a bar drinking coffee, not whiskey, just coffee. He looked up when I walked in, held my eye for a second, then looked away. A man who did not go in for reunions. I sat down anyway. I ordered coffee. I said, "I heard there's a school up in Cimarron County, the Reyes School." He said, "Yes." I said, "How many students?" He thought about it. He said 17 last I heard. He drank his coffee. I drank mine. That was the last I ever saw of him. Here's what I took from all of it, partner. Men who prey on the weak count on one thing above everything else, and that is isolation. They count on there being nobody. Nobody who owes anything to the person being taken from. Nobody willing to carry a debt of honor all the way back down the mountain and into the dust. Most of the time they are right about that. The world is big, and most people have got enough trouble of their own. But every so often there is a man who carries a promise farther than it was supposed to go. And when that man shows up at the door, the whole picture changes. The people who thought they had it won start to wonder, The Calloways had a judge, hired guns, and the law on their side. What they didn't have was someone willing to show up and stay. Turns out that was the only thing that mattered. Keep your powder dry, my friends. Keep your word solid and your debts paid. The world asks a lot. The least you can do for someone in it is show up when you said you would. Until our trails cross again. Good night.